Okay, so I'm going to try and give a little impromptu demo for what captures are like in um, Talon, what you can do with them, how you use them, and so on. So here I've just set up two files in my Talon directory, test.py and test.talon. I've imported, the module and context, the basic things you need into the Python file. Captures are one of the Talon features that you really can't do entirely in .talon files. You need Python files to use them. And the idea of captures is if you have a command that has some part of it that has a complex grammar that you might want to reuse across multiple commands. Numbers, yeah. Numbers are actually probably the classic example. Like we actually have numbers in Talon, in NouSJ. The problem is they're kind of complicated, but I could try and do a little baby demo of numbers. So let's imagine we didn't have numbers. Right, so to give an example, currently in NouSJ there is a number capture. And what it does is it allows you to speak a number in a certain format and it will recognize that number. So this is an example of something that uses a capture, right? And this is adding a little command that if you say test and then some number, it will, write testing that number. So let's give it a whirl. Test 42. Test minus 30. Scratch junk. Test 237 million. All right. The minus 32 didn't work because numbers aren't usually signed. So this is an example of a command that uses a capture. Now the actual capture for this is fairly complicated, but let's try and make a really simple version of it. So over here in the Python file, the way that you make a capture, see the problem is I've forgotten this. So let me go look at numbers.py. Context.capture, right, okay. The way you make a capture is you do something like this. First you make a module, then you use the mod.capture function to declare a capture. You have to use it with an @ before it. This is a Python feature called a decorator, and it means it sort of modifies the function below it. So we're trying to make a, I don't know, mini number capture. And we're going to need to give it various things. So we're going to need to give it a rule. This tells Talon what words to recognize. So this is like the thing that would go on the left-hand side of a colon in a Talon file. Then we need to give it a type description, which tells it what this capture is going to produce. In this case, we're going to produce an integer, right? We need to give it a docstring. And then we need to actually implement it, this code down here. This M argument is basically it represents the text that Talon has heard us speak, right? So it represents the result of parsing this stuff. So just to get this off the ground without actually getting it working. So the way we would use this is we would over here in our Python file use user.mininumber. So because we're declaring this from a user file, it's implicitly given the user prefix. So let's, for now, just try to parse the number 1. So the only thing we're going to recognize is 1, and we're going to return the number 1. Okay, so now if I say test 1, it should recognize the number 1 and it should output testing 1. Test 1. Talon sleep. Okay, that's odd. I see in my command history, which unfortunately you can't see, that it did recognize test 1, but it didn't. Okay, I'm going to try sharing my entire screen instead of
You're
this.
using the old number capture on the right-hand side
Hold on,
instead
sharing
of the
that.
new mini number.
Oh, you're right. That was the problem. So let's, okay, now we actually have the log. Okay. You have to make sure that the thing that you use on the right-hand side in your file, the name has to match the thing on the left-hand side. So let's fix that. Test 1. Okay, so that actually worked. So this actually ran our code. So just to prove that it's running our code, let's add this little print statement and then look over here in the log. And all right, let's test 1. So as you can see, it did in fact run our code, right? We can see that it decoded test 1 successfully and it printed our we statement. So this code is now running when we say test 1, and it's running in order to parse the 1 that we spoke. So that's kind of boring, right? This capture is doing nothing useful yet. So now let's try and make it parse a single digit. So the first thing we need to do is make it, accept more than just the phrase 1. 4, 5, 6, 8, 9. Okay, this is getting a little long, so why not put this on its own line? Okay, so now it will accept 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, but it'll still only return the number 1. So this is problematic. We need to actually get at the word that was spoken. And there are various ways to do this. Well, actually, in this case, I think there's only one, which is, let's say if we do m bracket 0, it'll get at the first word that was spoken, or the first, recognized component. And so here, that will not return us an integer, though. That will just return us a string. So what we're going to do is make a little dictionary that maps words to numbers. Forgot about 0. Okay, so now what we'll do is take the first word that was spoken, which is m bracket 0, and run it through our digits dictionary, and that will hopefully give us our number. And so now hopefully I should be able to say test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, etc. But no number longer than a digit. So test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, test 5, test 6, test 0, enter, test 9, test 8, test 7, Talon sleep, Talon sleep, delete line north, delete line. Oh, of course, I made Talon sleep. What am I thinking? Okay, so now that much works. We have our capture recognizing a single digit. Thus far, though, this is not doing much more than a list could do, right? A list could almost do this, only lists only generate, turn strings into other strings. They don't turn strings into integers. But where it gets interesting is if we want to parse something more complex. So
just to interject for a second. So M is going to be a list. Is that correct?
M is actually going to be a capture object. Yeah, I think that's what Talon calls them. So actually, let's try printing the representation of M. Test 3. Right. That's how it happens to print out capture objects, but I'm pretty sure that internally Talon refers to that as a capture object. I don't fully understand the API for Talon capture objects, but you can act as if they're lists. You can you can use brackets to get specific elements out of them, which correspond to the words that were recognized. And also, if the capture referred to a list or another capture, you could get it out by referring to it as an attribute of the capture. So just to give an example, if I made this capture, I don't know, what's a good, this isn't a good example because I'm using another number, but okay, if I was going to use the pre-existing number capture to implement our new mini number capture, which is, not what we're here to do, but then I could instead do return m.number. Or I could do that, right? So this as a capture would match any string of the form mini followed by a number, right? And it would return the number. So if I use this down here, I would expect that if I say test mini 4, I will see testing 4 printed. Does that make sense?
Why would M have a number attribute?
Because I've used the capture in the rule, which is the thing that gets parsed, the thing that it expects you to say. It's using the capture number. And so the number gets bound as an attribute of M.
Okay.
So one way to think of this is that like this string is like the left-hand side of a declaration in a Talon file, right?
Right.
So if I did mini number, over here, I would be able to use number to refer to the thing that was bound. And that's sort of the same as having, this thing, right? The rule is mini number and M represents all the things that are bound on the right-hand side.
Right.
So m.number, yeah. So I think this will work. Test mini 3.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, but that's just reusing our existing number parsing code, right? Okay, if we actually wanted to do our own number parsing code, let's say we just want to match a sequence of digits. We want to have the person speak a sequence of digits and get the number that is their concatenation out. Well, we previously had what, 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Jesus. You know what? I'm going to do the numbers up to 5. Forget about the higher ones. Okay. Now I've added a plus on the end, which means, 1 or more repetitions. So we have, repetitions of the digits 0 through 5. Okay. M.number doesn't make any sense. So if we take M and we turn it into a list, we will just get the words that were spoken, right? Which is a sequence of, words, each one of which is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. If we then, for each one of those, pass it through our digits dictionary, we'll get a list of numbers. And then what we want to do is concatenate them all, except concatenation isn't an operation in Python, is it?
You can just reduce plus maybe?
Well, that would be adding them all together, which is not what we want because
Oh,
then
sorry,
4
sorry. Yeah, I
5,
forgot. These are numbers,
yeah.
not strings. All right.
Yeah, these are but instead of making them numbers, we can turn them into strings, right? So we can now we have a list of strings, and now I think that will give us all those strings joined together, and then let's turn that into a number. This is getting to be a big expression, but I think this will do what we want, because it will take all the words that we spoke. I'll use my mouse pointer, take all the words that we spoke. I think actually you can omit the list here. Take all the words that we spoke. For each one, it will map it through the digits thing to get a digit, a number. Turn that digit into a string. It will concatenate all those strings, and it will turn that whole thing into an integer, which is, I think.
And I guess technically maybe we don't even need to go through a dictionary because presumably the individual words are going to be strings already in the M. Is that correct or no?
Yes, but they will be the strings 1, 2, 3, not the numerals 1, 2, 3
Oh,
as strings, but the literal things that we spoke.
Sweet, sweet. Okay.
Yeah. So they will be the words 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's give this a try. So let's try, I'm going to try, I guess, test 3, 4, 5. Test 3, 4, 5. Yay, it worked.
Nice.
All right, so that is a basic demonstration of a capture. So it lets you, say to parse this complicated rule, run this code, right, and treat that as the result of the capture when I use it in an actual voice command.
Yeah, this is really helpful. One other last quick question is just, so you said, plus means one or more repetitions. Are there any other rules that I should be aware of, or does it follow like some already codified set of rules?
I think the Talon wiki goes over the rules,
Okay.
but just as a brief refresher, they're all sort of regular expression-like things.
Okay.
There is foo or bar. There's which is disjunction. We've already seen that down there. There's foo star, so that means 0 or more repetitions. There's brackets foo, which means 0 or 1, so that means an optional thing. Right. There's foo plus. What else is there? I think
it's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can just read on regex and all that. Yep.
Yeah, and look at the Talon wiki.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that's basically it. Does anybody else have questions?
It sounds like this could work also for something like 11 p.m. where you don't want it to write out 11 p.m. but you want it to write out 11:00 space capital P capital M.
Yeah. Absolutely. Captures are pretty powerful. You can, because, basically they run a bunch of Python code, so you can do whatever you want.
Okay. And this is just mostly for printing out, correct? It's not for commands.
Yeah, you shouldn't be doing anything in a capture apart from like parsing, right? Like the point is to turn what you've spoken into some data that gets fed into a Talon script. Don't do side effects, don't open applications, don't, avoid that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh wait, why not open applications or do side effects or whatnot?
I think basically because that's not what they're for. I'm honestly not sure what would go wrong. Actions, right? So in Talon actions, that's a place to do whatever you like. But captures are mainly there for parsing, for understanding what you've said. Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like bad practice where the Talon is all about side effects and opening stuff, but that's what the commands are for and what actions are for. And
it's best to stick with the model of the capture gets fed into a command, right?
Yeah.
So if you start doing something inside the capture, you're just going to cause yourself all kinds of problems because it's going to make it harder to maintain. It's going to make it harder to track down where things are happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
So, like you can call. There's nothing preventing you from using certain actions in a capture. So you might use like actions dictate.parse words to parse something, right? You can still use actions. It's just I would stick with the actions that are just helping you parse things, right? and then feed the end result into an actual Talon command using actions on the Talon script side.